Emmerdale's Jo Tate furiously confronted Kim tonight, after recently discovering her will. Jo was heartbroken to learn that Kim's cleaner and best friend Lydia Dingle would be inheriting Home Farm after her death, and finally made his feelings known. Earlier this week, Graham Forster showed the confidential document to Jo in a bid to turn him against Kim. However, Graham's plan soon backfired when vengeful Jo began plotting against innocent Lydia instead. Jo's plan to frame Lydia for fraud was thwarted by Dawn Fletcher, who made him see sense. She suggested he discuss his issue directly with Kim, reminding him that money wasn't everything. In tonight's episode, Jo could barely hide his disdain for Lydia as she sang loudly while cleaning the house. His bad mood was noticed by Kim, who pushed him to explain himself. Kim asserted that she could bequeath her possessions to whoever she chooses, but Jo insisted it was his birthright, and the only place that has ever mattered to him. Kim listened as Jo explained his love for his childhood home and recalled fond family memories. "This is the only place that I have ever been happy," he shared. "I can appreciate that. But you're not the only one who feels that way," Kim replied, explaining that she has to also consider her other family members. "Years from now, you will all be at each other's throats, and who will be responsible for that? Me." The businesswoman shared that her loved ones have all been financially provided for, and that she's been more than fair in the distribution of her wealth, but Jo insisted she had stabbed him in the back. Kim rightly guessed that Graham had revealed the will, in order to cause tension between them. But has he succeeded in his quest? Jo Tate stood by the tall bay window of the grand living room, his reflection staring back at him like a stranger. The weight of what he'd learned pressed heavily on his chest. It had started with Graham Forster. Graham had approached him with that same unreadable expression. Calm, calculated, almost sympathetic. He hadn't needed to say much. Just a few words. Just enough to ignite a storm. Kim's will. Jo had laughed at first, assuming it was some elaborate mind game. But when Graham placed the document in his hands, everything shifted. The truth lay there in black and white. Home Farm, the place that defined him, the place he had always believed would be his, was not his future. It belonged to Lydia Dingle. A cleaner. A friend. But not a Tate. Jo's grip tightened on the edge of the table as the memory replayed in his mind. He had read the will again and again, hoping the words would change, rearrange themselves into something more reasonable. They didn't. Chapter 2. A dangerous idea. Anger had come quickly, sharp, intoxicating. Jo had paced his room that night, his thoughts spiraling. If Lydia wasn't there, if she wasn't trusted, it would all fall apart. That was when the idea came to him. Frame her. Fraud. Something simple. Something believable. He knew how to manipulate situations. It was practically in his blood. But before he could act, someone intervened. Dawn Fletcher had caught wind of his intentions. She cornered him in the kitchen the following morning, her eyes steady and unafraid. "This isn't you," she told him firmly. Jo scoffed. "You don't know me." "I know enough," she replied. "You're angry, I get that. But ruining someone else's life? That won't fix anything." He tried to brush her off, but her words lingered. "Talk to Kim," she insisted. "If it matters that much, then fight for it properly." Jo hated that she made sense. Chapter 3. The breaking point. By evening, Jo's patience had worn thin. He sat stiffly in the living room, his jaw clenched as Lydia's voice echoed from down the hall. She was singing, loudly, cheerfully, completely unaware of the storm gathering around her. Each note grated on him. "She's happy," he muttered bitterly. "Of course she is." The sound of heels clicking against the marble floor drew his attention. Kim Tate entered the room, poised as ever. Her presence alone commanded attention. "You've been sulking all day," she observed coolly. "Care to explain why?" Jo didn't respond immediately. He just stared at her, his expression hardening. "Something's wrong," Kim continued. "And I don't do secrets under my roof." That was it. The last thread snapped. Chapter 4. The confrontation. "You want to know what's wrong?" Jo shot back, rising to his feet. "Fine. Let's talk about your will." Kim's expression barely flickered, but Jo noticed. So she knew. "Ah," she said calmly. "I wondered when this would come up." "You wondered?" Jo laughed bitterly. "You gave Home Farm to Lydia, Kim." "Lydia? I gave it to someone I trust," Kim corrected. Jo's hands clenched into fists. "It's my birthright," he insisted. "That house, this place, it's the only place that has ever mattered to me." Kim studied him carefully, her gaze sharp but not unkind. "Go on," she said quietly. Jo hesitated, then something inside him shifted. The anger didn't disappear, but beneath it, something more vulnerable emerged. Chapter 5, Memories of Home. I grew up here, Joe began, his voice softer now. Every corner of this house, it means something. He glanced around the room, his eyes lingering on the staircase, the fireplace, the portraits lining the walls. I remember running through those halls as a kid, thinking this place was untouchable, that it would always be mine. His voice faltered slightly. This is the only place I've ever been happy. For a moment, silence filled the room. Even Lydia's singing had stopped. Kim exhaled slowly. I can appreciate that, she said. But you're not the only one who feels that way. Joe's expression hardened again. That's not the point. No, Kim replied. It is exactly the point. Chapter 6, Kim's Truth. Kim walked toward the window, her posture straight, her voice steady. You see Home Farm as your past, she said. But I have to think about its future. Joe scoffed. So you give it to Lydia? I give it to someone who will protect it, Kim replied. Someone who won't tear this family apart fighting over it. Joe froze. What's that supposed to mean? Kim turned to face him. Years from now, she said, you will all be at each other's throats. And who will be responsible for that? Joe didn't answer. Me, Kim continued. That's who. Her voice carried a rare hint of emotion now. I've seen what money does to people. What power does. I won't have this house become a battlefield. Joe shook his head. That's not fair. I've been more than fair, Kim said firmly. Everyone I care about has been provided for. Financially and otherwise. Joe's anger flared again. Provided for? He snapped. You stabbed me in the back. Chapter 7, The Real Enemy. Kim's eyes narrowed slightly. This wasn't supposed to come out like this, she said. Not yet. Joe laughed bitterly. What? You were going to wait until you were dead. I was going to handle it properly, Kim replied. Her gaze sharpened. Tell me, Joe, how exactly did you find out? Joe hesitated. That was all the confirmation Kim needed. Graham, she said flatly. Joe said nothing. Kim sighed, almost amused. He really does love stirring trouble, doesn't he? Joe frowned. You think this is funny? No, Kim replied. I think it's predictable. She stepped closer to him. He wanted you angry. He wanted you to turn against me. And from the look of things, he's succeeded. Joe's jaw tightened. Had he? Chapter 8, Doubt Creeps In. Joe's mind raced. Graham had shown him the will. But why? To help him? Or to manipulate him? He thought about the plan he had nearly carried out against Lydia. The lies. The destruction. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like something else entirely. Maybe he's right, Joe muttered. Kim raised an eyebrow. Is he? Joe looked at her, really looked at her. For all her flaws, for all her ruthlessness, Kim wasn't impulsive. She didn't make decisions lightly. And yet, you chose Lydia over me, he said quietly. Kim's expression softened, just slightly. No, she said. I chose what I believe is best for everyone. Chapter 9, Lydia's Voice. From the doorway, a hesitant voice broke the tension. I didn't mean to overhear. Both of them turned. Lydia stood there, clutching a cleaning cloth, her expression uncertain. I don't want any trouble, she said. I never asked for any of this. Joe stared at her. For the first time, he saw not an obstacle, but a person. You'd give it back? He asked. Lydia hesitated. I don't know, she admitted. It's not about the house. Not really. Then what is it about? Joe demanded. She looked at Kim. Trust. Chapter 10, What Comes Next. Silence settled over the room once more. Joe exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. Everything felt different now. The anger was still there, but it wasn't as clear-cut anymore. You really think I'd destroy this place? He asked Kim. Kim held his gaze. I think you're capable of many things, she said. Good and bad. Joe let out a dry laugh. That's not exactly reassuring. No, Kim replied. But it's honest. Chapter 11, Unfinished Battles. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the room into shadow, Joe felt the weight of everything pressing down on him. His past. His pride. His expectations. I'm not done fighting for this, he said finally. Kim nodded. I wouldn't expect you to be. Joe glanced at Lydia, then back at Kim. But I'm not going to do it like that, he added. No lies. No games. A faint smile touched Kim's lips. Good, she said. Because neither will I. Epilogue. The game continues. Later that night, Joe stood alone outside Home Farm, staring up at the house that had shaped him. Nothing had been resolved. Not really. But something had changed. The battle lines weren't as clear anymore. And somewhere, in the shadows, Graham Foster watched and waited. Because this was far from over.